Over the course of a day of using Illustrator, you'll find yourself opening and closing panels, repositioning them, and at some point your screen may get messy. For example, maybe I'll go ahead and expand this panel dock. Maybe I want to get a closer look at some of the layers, so I brought out the layers panel on its own. By the way, you can just double click on a tab over here to collapse that panel temporarily as well, and then double click to reveal it. And maybe there's some other panels that you just don't use as often, so you went to the window menu and, for example, open up the Flattener preview panel, which happens to be a pretty big panel to work with. I'll also open up the Align panel, maybe put that about over here, and before you know it, your whole screen can be filled with panels. In fact, when panels are floating, it's certainly possible to position one over the other so they're partially hidden, or maybe even completely hidden. Sometimes you just want a way to stop the madness and start all over again. Well, with Illustrator, there happens to be a feature called Workspaces. Adobe refers to your workspace as everything you see on your screen. A combination of your document window, your tools panels, the rest of your panels. And there's a way inside of Illustrator to capture all that information and save it as a workspace. In fact, if you draw your attention to the upper right-hand side of my screen, you'll see this word here called Essentials. Illustrator comes with several preset workspaces, and one of them is called Essentials. If you click on this button, you can actually preview all the other workspaces that come with Illustrator. For example, there's one called Automation, Essentials. There are several that match other applications. For example, set up Illustrator to make it look like I'm inside of Freehand, or InDesign, or Photoshop, or for performing a variety of other tasks. But for now, I'm just going to re-choose the Essentials one to reset my workspace back to the default Essentials setting. It's important to realize, though, that Essentials doesn't really mean your personal essentials. It's basically a generic setting that Adobe came up with to create a level playing field for everyone. However, you may have your own personal essentials. Now, if this is your first time using Illustrator, or if you're pretty new to Illustrator, you may not be completely comfortable with the user interface to know what your essentials are. However, as you spend more and more time with Illustrator, you'll get a feel for which panels you use most often and how you like things positioned on your screen. When you've reached that point, you're ready to save your own customized workspace. For example, I'm a big fan of using the Appearance panel. We'll learn more about that later in the title, but for now, I'm going to come over here and actually drag the Appearance panel up onto my screen, and I'll put that right here. I like to use the artboards and the layers panels also, so I'll drag that group out, and once I expand it, I'll simply take this and also drag it so that it now gets combined together into this one floating panel dock. I really need some more room to view all my layers, so I'm going to go ahead now and expand this downwards just a little bit. And then what I'll do is I'll take the entire panel dock and move it over here to create a second panel dock. Now I can access these as I need to, and I have this information just as I want it. So what I want to do now is save this workspace so that later on, at any time, I can return back to this workspace and this layout just the way that I like it. To do that, I'll come back to this button. It's actually called the Workspace Switcher, and I'll click over here and choose Save Workspace. I'll call this one Morty, although at times I also like to call it My Happy Place. This way I know that I can always return to my happy place. But I'm going to click OK, and now you can see that my workspace name appears right here. If I were to switch to something else, for example, maybe now I wanted to do some digital painting, I'll choose now to the Painting workspace, and all the tools that I might need for painting are now available to me. But if I want to go back to my own personal essentials, I can switch back to my own workspace and get the settings just the way that I want them. Remember, you can always create more than one workspace. So depending on the kind of work that you do, you may have one for heavy type editing, one for just design exploration, or one for doing color studies. Feel free to create as many as you need, giving yourself more time to focus on your task at hand and less worrying about the user interface itself.